And it's a happy Monday indeed. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm joined today by Tony Haggerty and Amy Canavan for a Celtic State of Mind's Axon Bulletin. It's 12:30 and it is indeed the beginning of a new week, and we are going back to Celtic Park. Amy, you're obviously in the mood. You've already got the hoops on. That collar is unmistakable from the centenary season, and I know for a fact that's long before your time. Is that one of these reproductions, or is that an original?
It is an original. It's an absolute cracker. I do love it. It is before my time. The strip isn't mine, but I love it. I don't, like you say, it's iconic. The collar in particular, it's just, they just don't make them like that anymore. You know, the quality, you guys will know better than me as well, but all the strips, pretty much every strip before my time, they're just, it's unbelievable, the quality, the colouring as well. It's kept it so well, but the collar in particular, I just absolutely love it. It's so good. And yeah, I am in the mood already because it's just buzzing to get back to Parkhead tonight, buzzing to be back amongst fans. It's like you say, it's the start to a great week, hopefully.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when I see that, Tony, it does bring a smile on my face, because that was the first season I started going to Celtic Park. 1987 was my first game. It was in the pre-season. It was, I've said this before, the Tommy Burns testimonial. And we went on to win the double in fairy tale fashion. And I remember thinking all those years ago, oh, this is great. Is it like this all the time? What thereafter followed wasn't quite like that. But the centenary season will always have a special place in our hearts, Tony.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was the first season that I managed to go to every game, home and away. Proud record. I was delighted at that. JP ate your heart out. Didn't keep the ticket stubs, to be fair, but no, it was just brilliant. There is a goal that's lost in the ether. Joe Miller's on Boxing Day at Tannadice, where Chris Morris put the ball in, and I saw Joe Miller heading towards the ball, and then I just saw stairs and legs and people trampling all over me. It could have been pretty dangerous because the steps at Tannadice were like that Boxing Day. It was, but I knew it'd hit the net because of the reaction, but I've still never seen it, and I don't think it was ever captured on camera either. But you know, that was a last minute goal, and that team were famous for last minute goals. So it was a great season, just a wonderful campaign, and the whole euphoria of the centenary just swept them to the cup, didn't they? And Billy McNeil uttered that famous line, didn't he, in the cup final? There's a fairy tale about this club, and it was a fairy tale that season. So yeah, I don't think you can look at that strip that Amy's got on and not smile, because everybody will have their own personal memories. I mean, some great goals. Paul McStay's at Ibrox, et al. Just pick them out. You know, you can. The Rolodex in your mind, you just flash back to them. You know, it's the Polaroid stills. And you push the button, and you get the wee photo, and you can see it. You can see it all vividly, clearly.
The maestro's pirouette as he sets up Morris to cross in for McAvenny. So many great memories from that season. So thank you for sparking those memories, Amy Canavan. I mean, tonight, I'm thinking back to our encounters with Hibs back then. They were a decent side themselves in the late 80s, and they will have a bit of momentum tonight. We're going to be focusing on our encounter this evening at Celtic Park and what we're going to be facing, but also how we're going to be lining up as well. We haven't heard too much in the way of news on Joe Hart. Of course, he missed the game against St Johnstone. I'm guessing, Tony, that we're expecting Hart back in for tonight's game.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any issues there. I picked my team for the Celtic way, and memory serves, it was Hart in goal, Taylor left back, CCV, Starfelt, Juranovic. I've got McGregor, Rogic, Hatate, and Forrest, Maida, and Abada up front. I think that was my team, yeah. So, yeah.
So, you know, you already did your prediction before I decided on the title of today's show, but you would be handing out two debuts today. But we'll break that team down because I was talking about it just the other day with a couple of pals of mine about how do we start. Obviously, we've got a few injuries. Joe Hart hopefully isn't one of them, Amy. But let's look at Tony's defence then. Let's look at that defence. Juranovic in for Tony Ralston. Will Ralston be feeling a bit kind of like hard done by there?
Should be. Go on, Amy.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if you were asking Tony for. Sorry. Well, no, I'm a massive advocate for Tony Ralston. I think he will be feeling hard done by if he has missed out. And it's never going to. It's not on his own doings. I think that he is getting left out. I think it's pretty obvious that Juranovic is favoured there, and I know for a lot of fans that he is still the better on that side. But yeah, I think it's really harsh on Ralston, but that just shows you how great a season he's having. You know, obviously, if you spend money on Juranovic and you bring him in, it is to be number one, and he will expect you to be number one, you know, internationalist. And he's a fantastic player. And going forward, I do think he is probably better than Ralston. Just his end delivery, I think sometimes is a little bit more consistent, but it's nothing to do. If Ralston's not in the team tonight, you know, I think it is harsh on him, and he will, as Tony says, be feeling a little bit hard done by, and rightly so.
Well, I'm going to throw out the first disagreement of today's show because I'm playing Tony, right? I'm playing Tony Ralston at right back. Why would I play Tony? Well, I think that, yeah, Juranovic was signed as a first pick, Tony, no doubt about it. Absolutely no doubt about that. But I don't think on two counts that he's done enough to be the first pick, and I don't think that Tony Ralston has had bad enough performances to drop out at right back. But that takes me to the left-hand side because I do think Taylor will start tonight, Tony. I agree with that. But I would maybe play Juranovic at left back. Now, yes, I'm playing somebody out of position. What's your thoughts on that, though, Tony? I do expect Taylor to start tonight, but I would be playing Ralston at right back with Juranovic at left back.
My thoughts are that you can never second guess a manager, and I like Amy was saying there, you would feel hard done by if you're Ralston and he plays in the team that I've picked, but I wouldn't have a problem if he didn't, and he played Ralston, because you now have a kind of wee plethora of options there, don't you? To rotate and you've got, you can't say, well, you can call it strength and depth per se. But you brought Taylor back in for the cup final, didn't you? Taylor actually played really, really well in the cup final. And then Ralston had to sit out, didn't he? For a couple of games, and he has done. So I just go with what I thought maybe the manager's thinking on it. I quite like Juranovic. You know, I think I'd maybe take your point on that he's not fully cemented that right back slot, but I think he's getting better and better. I've got nothing against Ralston for his performances this season. I mean, people knew my thoughts about Ralston previously, but as I've said, he's flipped that on its head. And I just think now that the managers, that's what the manager gets paid for, to make those big calls. And I would go with Taylor and Juranovic as my left and right back tonight. But if Ange plays Ralston and Juranovic out of position, then I ain't going to question that. If anything, I'll just say, right, fine, I trust your judgment. You know, so we're actually have our teams and we do, and you know, sometimes it's banging the money, other times it's not. So
yeah, absolutely. And any opportunity to use the word plethora on Axom will be used, because it is the most used word on the chat group, Tony. So there's the klaxon. The plethora klaxon. Dong, right.
I'm going to look it up on the finish here. You know what I mean?
Love it. Now, when we're looking at the centre halves, then, you know, there's obviously been images over the last week or so, and an appearance by Chris Jullien. Amy, don't expect for a minute for him to start tonight. So at this moment in time, Cameron Carter-Vickers and Starfelt is what Tony's going for. There's obviously been interest as well from Udinese in terms of Stephen Welsh. Liam Scales has suggested in the past his strongest positions, centre half, left side of the centre half partnership. It is getting to that point, if Jullien remains fit, and we all hope that he does, that we do have a bit of strength in there all of a sudden. I mean, at the beginning of the season, it was the exact opposite, wasn't it?
Yeah, but as we've said, it can turn so quickly, just as it's quickly turned, looking likely to turn, getting a little bit of strength. If Welsh was to go at any time during this window, then you would kind of be worrying again, because Jullien, right now, he's still very much 50-50, even if you can call it that. You know, and it could only be a matter of time until he's back, but an injury comes again, because he has just been so unlucky, and he's never going to come back in and be a 90-minute player right away. It's going to have to be a gradual process. But yeah, for tonight, I do think it'll be a Starfelt partner in Carter-Vickers. I think Ange made that pretty clear that is who he wants at the back going forward. Consistency is certainly key. And going into this, really crucial period, I can see him sticking with that. And I think Starfelt himself needs that a little bit of confidence. I think we've all got kind of, I don't think he's been as settled perhaps as Carter Vickers, but as much as we're saying, he does have little moments of worry in him. I think consistently he is still there. He's by no means the best, but money has been spent. You need to still give him a run, I would feel. And I think, as Tony's saying, you're trying to think how Postecoglou will play it, and I think he's made it very clear that Starfelt and Carter Vickers are his number one pairing.
When you look at this season, I don't disagree with that, by the way, but when you look at the season and the journey that Starfelt's had from the beginning, Tony, going back to the situation we were in then compared to now with the centre-halves, we had to play Dane Murray. You had to throw him in for his debut in a Champions League qualifier. A shocking situation we should never be in. We've had to play Beaton out of position. So we were in the market. We were desperate, actually, for a centre-half to come in. Starfelt was that man. But, even his debut wasn't an ideal set of circumstances for the player. Ange Postecoglou stood up for him there, and he says, he was basically thrown in to that game. He had done a bit of the training himself. He spoke about that at his initial press conference. He's tried to get prepared himself. He's in quarantine, having come over from Russia, I think it was, at the time. And he's thrown into that game. It wasn't a great start, wasn't a great performance by Celtic. And then I think that what then happened was Carter Vickers came in. They seemed to be developing a good partnership. And then we had a couple of performances where it was back to the point where you're thinking, I've got some doubts about Starfelt. And in particular, in the cup final, I thought was one of his poorer games. Now, I'm not using this as an opportunity to have a dig at him. I think he is still a first pick with Carter Vickers. However, there are some doubts among some Celtic fans, Tony. Like what Amy says, though, tonight's the night where you throw him in there, you show a bit of belief in him, and it's his jersey to lose.
Yeah, there's a player there in Starfelt, let's be honest, but everybody can point to various lapses in concentration, can't they? And, in iffy performances. You mentioned the cup final. I mentioned Ross County. When Jordan White came on and just rumbled them up and just gave a centre-half a good old-fashioned battering from a big centre-forward, And then you go to St Johnstone on Boxing Day, and Celtic are 2-0 up, going on 5, 6, 7, cruising, and he's a lapse from concentration with a terrible pass. The ball's crossed in, and it's a goal. And St Johnstone were absolutely dire that game, but it was Starfelt that handed them their moment and their opportunity to get back in. So you can pinpoint these kind of instances, but in the other games prior to these ones, he's been pretty solid.
Yeah.
And he's did the job. And a lot of people are kind of, I would have personal jury still out, but I think you've got to accept that there's a player there somewhere, and he maybe just finding his feet and taking it longer than others to find their feet, and that's fine. But what he does know, that any lapses in concentration will get punished. He has to be on his game all the time, and I think if someone's prone to lapses in concentration and wandering, then they'll get found out every now and again. I think that's what's happening with Starfelt. But when he's on it and he's focused, then I think you and Amy will agree he's pretty solid. And I think he's benefited by having Carter Vickers beside him.
Without a doubt.
The two of them dovetail quite nicely. In most games that they've played, there's the odd moment, but, they're defenders, they're Celtic defenders. We always have defenders that give you the odd moment, don't they?
And overall, the record speaks for itself, domestically at least, Tony, in terms of the defensive record.
Well, Celtic are on a 17-match unbeaten domestic run, and they've conceded the least amount of goals, haven't they? And Starfelt's part of that defence. So he can't be a bad footballer. I had a go to the Ross County game because I just thought he'd get spooked by the big guy coming on who was on to spook him. And he let it in. That's it. That's the reason I had a kind of a go then. Still stand by it, but I'm not saying he's a rotten defender. I think he does things quite well. I think he's decent in the air, but it's just his distribution on the ground. Sometimes he just looks cumbersome and uncomfortable, doesn't he? With that
on the left-hand side.
Yeah. A lot of Celtic's problems come from that, don't they? Reflected by him.
Well, the thing with that is, I think that when you're looking for centre halves and you've made inquiries for several centre halves, and eventually you get two of them, and the first one that comes in probably isn't as strong on the left hand side, but you've got Carter Vickers who's stronger on the right, so there's a decision to be made, and you don't want to play Carter Vickers in an area that he's maybe not as strong in. So Starfelt is adapting to that. Talking about left-hand-sided players, though, Amy, someone who has had some much-needed experience in the first team this season is Adam Montgomery. He made his breakthrough last season at the worst possible time. This time last year, wasn't it? Post-Dubai, we're not going to labour that. Incidentally, we're in a much happier place now. But Montgomery come into the side, as I say, under difficult circumstances. But he's had a lot of game time up until now. But there is talk now that he could be one of the youngsters who are moving away for more game time alongside the likes of Ewan Henderson and Liam Shaw, of course, who are already away to Hibs and Motherwell. What's your thoughts on that with Montgomery? Because I did see progress in his first half a dozen games this season. There was then a couple of performances. I think the Dundee United game, it wasn't at his best in that particular game, but I've seen a lot from him. However, you've got to weigh it up. Is he going to get game time between now and the end of the season? If not, get him out on loan. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's the perfect move for him. Not in the same case as Ewan Henderson, in the sense that, I think it's vital that he comes back. But I agree kind of everything you said there. I think he really did start well. I was a really big fan, but I think in recent months, when the time for him has been, or the game time, has been a little bit less frequent, I do see a little bit of a dip. So I think right now, kind of what I think we were talking about just last week, how important it is for, our players, or especially our young players, to go out and play with clubs within our country, even if it may not be the Premiership, certainly the Championship, then I think that would be the ideal move for Montgomery, just to get some game time between now and the end of the season, perhaps playing for a team that, still have a lot to be playing for. They're not kind of a mid-table team, even if they are in a little bit of a relegation battle, whichever league or team it may be. I just think, you could learn an awful lot from that. And I really do like Montgomery. But as you're saying, it kind of shows right now already the turnover, and not going to say strength and depth, but just the amount of bodies perhaps that Celtic do have around right now. Because, Adam Montgomery was on the bench at the start, and you were thinking he is probably going to need to come on at some point. But now you're looking further and further down the line. And that is a great, situation to be in for Celtic, and Postecoglou will be rubbing his hands together at that. But for Montgomery himself, I think it's important he goes out on loan, gets some game time. Like I say, I think there's plenty of clubs out there that he could go to within the top two divisions in Scotland and play well, learn a lot from a lot of experienced guys around him, from a lot of good managers. Probably one of the best positions Scottish managers have been in, or Scottish leagues have been in. There's a lot of good managers around. And I think that would be great, kind of for all parties, and important that he comes back in the summer.
See, it's one of these situations, like you say, mate, where at the beginning of the season, we couldn't afford to put him out on loan. We needed all the bodies we could possibly get. So I think it's an indication, Tony, that Ange Postecoglou has got a much deeper squad. The depth is there. But what you don't want is, you don't want a player like Montgomery to stagnate. We've seen a lot of youngsters over the years who have come in, got a few. I mean, listen, Ewan Henderson's part of that. Part of his problem, not enough game time. We don't want that to happen, so get him out on a 6-month loan deal and make sure that he's getting plenty of game time in those legs.
I made the point the other week that at this moment in time, Ange sees the club taking a certain direction. We just have better players at the minute, guys with more to offer, like some Montgomery and Henderson and Shaw. So there's no shame in that. But as you say, get them out and get them used to the Scottish football terrain. Get them at clubs like Motherwell, and even if it is a relegation battle, they'll be a better player for it.
Mm-hmm.
Stand them in good stead. They'll know how to, what they need to win, all that kind of stuff. So I don't think any experience away from Celtic with a Scottish Premiership club is a bad one per se, as long as they're playing. When they'll go to every ground and they'll know exactly what's in front of them when they come back to Celtic, and they'll be able to make a valid contribution. It's just at this moment in time the manager has got kind of, not settled, but he's got a kind of team, I think, in his mind, all being equal, moving forward, that he wants to play in a list of subs. He's got it in his mind, and we all kind of know it, don't we? So you He's even said there, guys like Montgomery at this moment in time, Shaw, Henderson, just don't keep them not, do they? They're not bad footballers. You know, they're good footballers because they're good for Celtic. But they're just not good enough to make them breakthrough into the team right now. Under Ange, you don't do it with somebody else. Don't do it Ryan Christie did. Don't do it Ayer did at an Aberdeen and a Kilmarnock. And then I keep saying it, then they come back and they can make an impact. They can make a valid contribution because they've played against the same teams. They know what to expect. And the premise is the same. You go another team, you play football, you win games for that football team. If you're coming back to Celtic, the pressure's no different, is it? You have to win football matches, so it doesn't matter where they go, whether it's a kind of top end of the table or a mid-table or bottom end of the table. You have to win football matches. You want to prove that you can make a difference and you can help that team. So I'm all for it. I'm all for it. But as long as they come back having gained something from the experience and not understand and not contributed, that's there's no use in that. Can't send them out on loan where they don't play.
I agree with that because we have seen there was a good example actually previously where we're sending loan players out and they are sitting in the stands and they're not learning anything, Tony. And I think that when you look at a player like Ewan Henderson, for example, who has gone away to Ross County, this is the example I'm thinking about, and he spent most of his time just kicking his heels. To the point where the loan deal was cut short. And you flip that and you look at Leo Held, for example. He's a player that ordinarily I wouldn't use as an example to say he went away and made an impression, but he did. But it just so happens that when he comes back, he doesn't want to play with Celtic. He's away down playing for Leeds United. But a big part of that process and his development was a loan spell also at Ross County, where he got massive plaudits by the then manager, John Hughes, who was raving about him. And he's obviously got a move, which isn't benefiting Celtic other than in the transfer fee that we got for him. So we've spoken about the defence and the goalie for tonight. I'm going to try and invite as many comments into the discussion as possible. Let me know if you agree or disagree with our lineup so far. But talking about defence and goalkeepers, Tony, I don't know if you had a chance to watch the Retro Video Club yesterday, but there was a fantastic section before your time again, Amy. Early 90s, Gordon Marshall was signed as Celtic's goalkeeper from Falkirk. I remember it well, 250 grand. He comes in under Liam Brady, had a chance to sign for Rangers or Celtic, and he chose Celtic. But such was the times back then, Amy, that your football wage wasn't enough. You had to have something on the side. And Gordon Marshall was a hairdresser. So, of course, the Celtic Collection video decided that the presenter, Paul Cooney, would be getting his hair cut whilst he interviewed Gordon Marshall. Did you manage to capture that bit of gold dust footage on Sunday, Amy?
I watched it this morning, actually.
Bizarre, wasn't it?
Yeah, a little bit odd. It made me laugh. Tony, you'll appreciate this as well, but I can't think of anything close to having a footballer right now in a Celtic side having another job on the side. It's mental. I think it's crazy, and I don't know if he was the best barber in the world, but it was definitely an insight into something that I didn't know. I like to think that I'm okay with my little bit of niche knowledge. I pick up a lot from Paul when I'm doing the studio, but that was one that I wasn't aware of.
The thing is, these footballers of today are building brands and they're building companies. And there we've got Big Marsh, Tony, sitting there cutting hair, and Paul Cooney's asking him, whose hair do you cut? And he's the gaffer. So he was cutting Liam Brady's hair. I just found it utterly bizarre, but it was a sign of the times, wasn't it?
Very much so. And I think a lot of people would accuse Gordon Marshall of keeping goal at hairdresser, wouldn't they? Especially in the Cup final in 1994. And that's what I think of when I think of Gordon Marshall in the League Cup final '94.
Yeah,
would say we move on. We should probably have stuck to the hairdressing. Maybe he still does.
He maybe does. But the thing is, I've said this before, Tony. Tommy Burns was a goalkeeper shot from having a great Celtic side.
I think a few Celtic managers have been a goalkeeper short of a great Celtic side. Martin O'Neill was the same, wasn't he?
He done all right. He done okay.
And arguably the best goalkeeper we had couldn't play in the UEFA Cup final, Javi Sanchez-Broto.
Where is he now? Wonder if he's cutting here.
Yeah, of the goalkeepers they had at the time. Because I believe Javi Sanchez-Broto went to Ibrox not long before and he stole it, didn't he? He kind of came to the fore at Livingston and Celtic signed him, but strangely they'd signed him knowing was he cup time because he played in the earlier UEFA Cup rounds with Livingston. I think that was because they signed him after the deadline, something like that, wasn't it?
Interesting.
Aye, yeah, and Martin O'Neill had these goalkeeping problems, didn't he? Because he had Hedman, he had Broto, he had others as well, didn't he? He had Gould at the start, Karim. There was that Barnes. He was still
Barnes brought him in, but he was still there. He was still hanging about. Tony.
Celtic went through that word again. A plethora of goalkeepers from Martin at the time as well, didn't they? And
they did.
And Rangers had Stefan Kloss at the time, didn't they? So had we had someone of that ilk, Celtic could have won the European final. Well, not blaming Rap Douglas per se, but you just sort of say it's levels, isn't it, of player. And I always thought Martin O'Neill kind of maybe didn't lay any great stress on having an international class goalkeeper when other clubs did. That's what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
Big part of your team. I mean, Rangers went from Gorham to Kloss, didn't they?
But you're talking about international class. Even when we brought one in Hedman, he wasn't. At that point, he wasn't the answer either, Tony. Because he on big wages as well when we brought him in because of the market that we were utilising back then. Just buying first starters, first team picks from the English Premiership.
But it was an Achilles heel, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The goalkeeper. So it's and I often wondered why Celtic couldn't get just someone to nail that position down.
And look at us now. Look at us now with Joe Hart talking to hairdressers and all the rest of it. I'm not going to be using any of the cliche terms when I'm talking about Joe Hart's hair because it's looking fabulous. But we've got loads of people tuning in, about 1,000 tuning in. Thanks for getting involved, Scott Howe. Good to see you back. Hail. Thank God the football's back. Mon the hoops. Well, Amy's so excited she's already got the kit on, ready to go. What time are you leaving tonight?
God, it'll not be tonight. I'm the driver tonight, so I'll be ushering everyone around at about 4:30. Got to give ourselves a little bit of leeway. So around 4:30.
Brilliant. And Sean F, how's it going? Chat, can't wait for this game tonight. There is a buzz about the place, just to go back to the centenary year again. So what did you think about the defence then? A wee disagreement in terms of the fullbacks, but I think most of that defence picks itself. Let's move into the midfield reminders. Tony, what's your three midfielders? You're giving a debut to Hatate, I believe.
Yeah, Hatate alongside Rogic and McGregor, yeah. I think he's brought him into play, hasn't he?
Well, he has, and he needs to, because there are a few positions where we're still short due to this injury crisis.
Might be a bit harsh in your Beaton, but I think if you're giving the Celtic supporters a choice, they want to see Hatate, don't they?
I think that, although it's a tough game, and I know that Hibs went on a bad run prior to the departure of Jack Ross. Although it's a tough game, it is an ideal game in many ways. At home, the return, Amy, for one or two debutants this evening. And like Tony says, I think Beaton has been a real plus point for Postecoglou, probably unexpected alongside a couple of others. I think Beaton has performed particularly well. But looking at the showreels, listening to the press conferences, Hatate does seem to be a player that we can put in there as a ball-winning midfielder. So maybe the stage is set this evening for him to make his arrival.
I certainly hope so. And again, it's kind of not quite to the scale of Tony Ralston, but, Beaton before the break was absolutely superb, and we were all, ranting and raving about him, and rightly so. It was all warranted. So I think Beaton could perhaps feel a little bit hard done by, but obviously a lot can happen in this 3-week break, really. But I think what's ideal for a player like Neil Beaton, really, is probably the 5 substitution rule coming back into play. If Hatate manages an hour kind of thing, and then you've got half an hour left. Beaton, is more than capable to come in and still make a little bit of an impact. He's more than comfortable coming in as if there's a lead to defend, or he can stretch play, which we kind of did see more in his game prior to the break. But yeah, I do believe the stage is set tonight. I think Hibs, as we say, they've definitely got the buzz around them with Maloney. The fans have certainly got the buzz around them, but they're coming into this not in an injury crisis, but they've got a fair few players out, and it's not a full strength Hibs squad. And I think Celtic can take advantage of that. And I'm not saying then that you hand out the debutants purely because it's going to be a weakened Hibs side. But I think, as you're kind of saying, all the stars are aligning for it to happen. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Hatate start tonight.
Again, though, it's that position of the park whereby Beaton's come in and he's made the jersey his own up to this point, Tony, but the second option that we would have, not ordinarily, would either be someone like James McCarthy or Ismail Soro. The fact that we are willing to throw in a player we've never seen in action says a lot about the other two players I've just mentioned there. Tony, I don't think for a minute McCarthy's going to be leaving Celtic. He's been given a contract that's too long for that to happen. But it certainly does look likely that Soro could well be one of these guys that moves from the park this January.
Yeah, possibly should do as well. But I get back to it. This is a manager that made a play for these guys very early. Celtic supporters knew about these three players long before the January transfer window kicked in. They actually came in and hugged me before the January transfer window officially started. But you'd known for 2 or 3 months before that Ange Postecoglou wanted these players. And allowing for the fact that they'd played a full season in Japan, still wanted them. And all three spoke at various press conferences they had, and they all said they were fresh and ready to go and couldn't wait to get started. So, again, I get back to it. Whilst all three might not play, I don't envisage him playing all three players, but, my first thought would be that he would play Maeda and Hatate, because these are the positions that he was speaking about, clambering, saying that we were short in, and it's no slight on what Beaton has done, because Beaton has actually stepped up to the plate and performed so fairly well, as Amy said, and gained plaudits, and rightfully so. So again, to try to second guess the manager, maybe he won't disrupt that, because he might want to keep faith with Beaton and do it the other way around and get Beaton the hour or 65, 70 minutes and bring Hatate on for 20. He might do that. I just think he's bringing these guys over for a reason, isn't he? I think he wants to see them hit the ground running the way Kyogo did. And if he can get anything like that from the two of them tonight, then, the whole feel-good factor will come roaring back again. I mean, the fans, as you said there, there's a real buzz about getting back. Amy's got the job on, she's jumping in the car at +4. Let's go, so the old East supporters bus there coming through, marvellous. But everybody's excited. So let's add to that excitement by giving a debut to two of the new players. We brought them, we want to see them. And I think Ange is of that opinion as well. They're not here to sit on the bench for a few weeks or ease yourself in gently. Do what Kyogo did, hand them a debut and let's see what they've got. And they performed anything like Kyogo did in his first home out at Celtic Park, then the crowd will be in raptures by the end of it, So
absolutely, Tony, and I think that Ange Postecoglou couldn't wait for the January transfer window to open. I mean, he's got the bodies in now. He's got 3 bodies in, and I would love to, from a fan's perspective, see a couple of them tonight, if not all 3. And curtains are closing. It's buzzing to be back in the stadium tonight. Up the good guys. Helen McCallum reckons that Maeda will start tonight. We'll get to the strikers just a few more. Somebody else is asking Tony to sing a song. Can't think what song that would be, Tony. People are talking about Arthur Boric. Yeah, there's another name from goalkeepers of the past. Big Rab Douglas, Daniel F. Rab Douglas had the clean sheet award for a few years. Bit of a dumpling at times, but he done not too bad. And I'll tell you, his team's doing not too bad as well at the moment this season with Arbroath, isn't he? And another shout out for a few other goalies from the past also. So when we're talking about the midfield, Callum McGregor, captain, fantastic this season. I remember, thinking back to the Easter Road tie, McGregor and Rogic, got some kind of rough treatment, didn't they, at Easter Road? McGregor's walking about with a big gash on his shin, and partly due to the treatment Rogic gets, he gets injured and he misses quite a few weeks, and we missed him badly. I'm not saying he was targeted, Amy, but Rogic certainly gave him a few boots. Is that something that you're concerned about tonight? Is that style going to change under Maloney? Rogic is a game changer on evenings like tonight.
Yeah, he is. I don't see Alex Gogic starting for starters. There's a lot of talk about him, where he could be going. So I think maybe that'll be one less guy to perhaps worry about, who, like we say, he certainly had something in his mind for Tom Rogic a few weeks ago. But it is just going to come with the territory when you're kind of got the blessed talent that Tom Rogic has. It's 9 years ago today since he signed for Celtic, which is crazy.
Is that 9 years today, is it?
9 years today, yeah.
Brilliant.
Absolutely amazing. So that testimonial is coming. He's, when he's got the ball at his feet, it speaks volumes, the fact that they're having to, kick him up and down, and they're still not getting him down. You can talk about Tom Rogic for an hour. Again, I still can't believe a few seasons ago, and even just last season there, that a few fans would have been okay with him going. I think that's crazy. I love the guy. He's been one of the best players who can just turn the game on its head, certainly during my lifetime. And I've loved him for certainly the last 5-6 years. He had quite a slow start to Celtic. It wasn't, it didn't work out. I had to go out on a few loans. We're talking about loan deals earlier, but always just kind of plodded along. And when he got his chance, I know not every fan will say he grabbed it all the time, but when he turns it on, he turns it on. And I think this season more than ever, he's certainly turning it on more often than not.
Yeah, the thing with Tom, you're absolutely right. He comes in, highly rated player, Tony, you'll remember, one of the foosball players at some point. You can see the close control is unbelievable. It's not just Hibs. I'm not going to hit Hibs a hard time or Gogic, although I think Gogic is particularly rash at times. Tom Rogic wins a lot of free kicks in and around that area of the park, just outside the box. And in many ways, that's a weapon if we had someone who could hit a free kick a wee bit more effectively. But Tom Rogic is a player who did start off slowly, didn't really perform under Neil Lennon, I've got to say, first time round. And then he starts coming into his own, and people remember some of the goals, at Rugby Park and obviously in the cup final and against Rangers. And there was peaks and troughs in his Celtic career. And I'm going to say it, and there's probably podcasts over the last 18 months where I've said it. Tom Rogic, for me, could have left Celtic and I would have bid him farewell. Now it's unthinkable. At this moment in time, it's unthinkable. He is one of the players that when you're playing against tight-packed defences, Tony, and you don't have a Tom Rogic, you're crying out for him. He's the guy that can make the big difference. I mean, he's always going to be important, but I thought we saw the best 45-minute performance in his Celtic career against Hibs earlier this season.
Yeah, I would go along with that. My thoughts on Tom Rogic as well. They've kind of flipped, because I've always said that there was a player lying dormant there. Rodgers got a tune out of him. Lennon couldn't, and I can't understand that, because he's a naturally gifted footballer, right? But for whatever reason, he even played bit parts under Rodgers, didn't he? So you're like that. Well, why? And all of a sudden, Ange's come in and said to him, "Look, there's probably nothing I could teach you about football. Just go and do what you're naturally good at." Mm-hmm. Sometimes you need that. You need somebody to have total faith and belief in you. Whereas I think others were convinced that there was a footballer there, but maybe just didn't have that faith and belief in him. He was always getting hooked, wasn't he, after an hour? Then people questioned his stamina, his fitness and all that. And now you think to yourself, well, he's a Rolls Royce of a player, really, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because, again, I said you couldn't marry his performances to his goals, the whole DVD of great goals. But now he's married both under Ange. And what a player you have at your disposal. And excuse me, that 43 minutes he did play Easter Road, he was unplayable. Gogic did everything, booted him up and down the park, and he just kept going at him and taking the absolute mick out of him, didn't he? To the point where he was just like, my legs are sore now because this guy's just been kicking me the whole time. I'm I'm stretching, I'm twisting, I'm turning him. So it was a highly impressive performance. And Celtic were 3 up and cruising, weren't they?
Yeah, they were cruising. Yeah,
It was
and
down to him, wasn't it? Because
it was, and the game changed when he went off, Tony.
And Celtic's team changed when he wasn't in it,
mm-hmm.
and now to put him out, the team's unthinkable, isn't it? You worry when he's not there because he does so many good things. You look at that tight game against Motherwell. He's produced a moment of real quality when McGregor dummied the ball, and he's just, it's what Tom Logic does. He's a scorer of great goals, and there's a lot. I don't think I can remember an ordinary Logic goal.
That's the only game I've missed. That's the only game I've missed this season. And bizarrely enough, and I'm listen, just humour me here for a moment, right? Indulge me, Amy. Bizarrely enough, I was in a soft play centre in Kirkcaldy when that goal was scored. But the reason I'm bringing it up is I didn't realise this until a couple of weeks ago that used to be a venue called the Carlton Theatre, which in 1963 the Beatles played. So there you go. I'm throwing that wee bit of trivia in there, Amy. I know how much you love it. Simon Thomas, Rogic is pure class. He absolutely is pure class. And it's interesting now that we're moving into his 10th year. Will we see testimonials for James Forrest, Callum McGregor, Tommy Rogic and Nir Beaton? How interesting would that be in an era where it's difficult for a footballer to get 10 years under his belt at any one football club? People are asking about the forward line, who we're going to be playing up front. Well, Tony, you said we would be playing with Maeda, Forrest and Abada. Am I right in saying that?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and what we have there, again, is a scenario where we're throwing in a guy for his debut, but I don't think we're going to have the same issue that we had with Giakoumakis, where there was an issue, he's not had a pre-season. He's going in, he's hitting the ground running, Maeda, isn't he?
Well, the reason I said those 3 players is because they're interchangeable. They can all play in every one of those positions up front. The left, right, or through the middle. So you get 3 guys who could just kind of chop and change the whole time. And I think that's a good thing, especially if Hibs are going to come out and play. So you can maybe exploit that if they do come out of Sean Maloney. That's the way he said he's going to play. He wants to attack and entertain and that kind of stuff. So I think those 3 guys could get a bit of joy then. In the Hibs defence just by spinning and rotating and playing, because Abada can play centre and right, can't he? Well, sorry, centre and right. Maeda seemingly can play right and centre, can't he? And Forrest can play in any of those 3. So I think that gives you kind of options there, as opposed to just a one single focal point.
Yeah,
with 2 wingers. So that was my thinking behind that. It's also good to see Forrest back. I think he really is an unsung hero in that football team, and just doesn't get the credit he deserves. But I just think to see him back on the pitch is a great thing for Celtic.
Well, I think the very fact, Tony, that both yourself and me, because I agree with your forward line, you would throw him right back in. And I know that he's had stick in the past, etc., and he's sometimes seems to be inconsistent, drifts out of games, but his record does speak for himself. 13th season in the Hoops, Amy, incredible. 13th season in the Hoops. He's contributed to almost 200 goals, either by scoring or assisting. What's your concerns? We've spoken about our concerns with Julian, the other long-term injury, who might be in the squad this evening. It'd be great to see him on the bench at least. What's your thoughts on Jamesy Forrest? It's been stop-start this season, and last season was the same. Are we looking at a situation where we just need to manage him a wee bit better? He has played a hell of a lot of football. He's a bit like Kieran Tierney. Played a lot of football at a young age, didn't he? McGregor came into the team a wee bit later, but since he's came into the team, he's played every game virtually that he's been fit for. Is it just a case that we need to manage James's body a wee bit, even though he's not an old player? He's at that stage of his career now because of the games he's played.
Yeah, I think so. Like I say, I don't think he's an old player. I just think he's probably a slightly more fragile player. I think since he really came back, he's probably just been a little bit off. You say off the pace, you say slow, but James Forrest being slow is still probably just average winger speed. I used to get so frustrated with it, and I love James Forrest and always have, and we spoke about it so much that still for so many is the whipping boy. But there was just so many times that I think why he was the whipping boy is because you would just take him on, just take the man on, and he wouldn't go to the byline perhaps as many times as he should or could, because he was always going to beat the man. There was not a defender, certainly in Scotland at the time, probably for the majority of his career, that would ever match James Forrest. If he got down to the byline, his delivery is probably not the best as what it could be and what it maybe should be, because how often he can get down to the bye. But that was the most frustrating thing for me. It was just take him on. But he is a modern day legend, and legend is such an overused term, but he's played such an integral role in the last 10, 11 years of Celtic's history, that he is rightly up there. So I do think it is about managing him properly. I think he's going to be a guy that will see his career out at Celtic, which speaks volumes for itself. We're talking about how hard it is to have 10 years at one club, never mind a whole career these days. But I feel that Forrest will be one of those players. I think he would certainly be more than content with that. He's never been one of the showboaty guys, always wanting to be in the limelight. He's quite happy just almost plodding along. And pretty much going unnoticed. If you've ever read his autobiography, it's brilliant, by the way. I highly recommend it. And I think it shows him in the best light, that he's really not fussed, that he was never the main man kind of thing. Obviously, won the Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year awards when he was really young, under Lennon, first time rounds. But he's had a tremendous career at Celtic, and I now think it's time for Celtic to pay back to him, and manage him properly and look after him properly, but still give him any opportunity, because he can still play such a huge part in this side.
Yeah, big shout out to Joe Donnelly, who wrote that book. Joe's been on Axom a couple of times. Well, he was on the Sell the Jerseys as well. But I think when it comes to Forrest, we've spoken about a couple of players who could have been out the building, and Forrest could have been out the building. When you think back to when Rodgers came in, Tony, and there was a real change. I mean, he was transformed again under Rodgers. Rodgers did that to a lot of players. But he's not really had the opportunity under Ange Postecoglou. There's been snippets where he's come in and he's shown flashes. He's really not had the opportunity to be a pivotal player under Ange. But I think that will come in the second half of the season, Tony.
Still a big game player. Still scored when it mattered against St Johnstone at Hampden in the semi-final.
Yeah.
Scored in finals for Celtic before. He scored winning goals against Rangers. So nobody can convince me that Forrest isn't a big game player, an important player for Celtic. Regardless if he's your favourite or not, he does big things on big stages. And he can be a whipping boy all he wants, but I kind of refer to that kind of contribution as being quite a large contribution. I think he's got 19 medals. He's the most decorated player at the club. He's an out-and-out winner. People say Mir Beaton's got so many medals as well, but I would ask everybody to tell me what Mir Beaton's telling contributions to winning those medals has been. Probably can't say it, but you can tell what James Forrest's were or was. So yeah, I think he has a valuable contribution to make and an impact. And as Amy said, we do have to be mindful of him and injury worries and concerns. But players will always want to play, whether it's against the better judgment of the science and the medicine and the doctors and their manager. You look at what Ange said about Kyogo in the final. He would have snuck on the bus, he would have snuck on the park. And thankfully that's a day when that gamble paid off. It's not going to pay off all the time, as you've seen with Kyogo when you put him on against Betis and he get taken off. So these are the things you have to manage moving forward. And hopefully we'll learn a wee bit from that. But I think James Forrest is a wonderful player to have at your disposal and in your armoury. It really is, and I think Forrest, you'd say to players who are maybe coming to the twilight stages of their career, but I think Forrest still looks hungry. You saw what the goal in the semi-final meant to him. He does that ad nauseam. You would think that. There's a player that's never get tired of coming up with big moments for Celtic and never will, and neither will the fans. And I guess he's been a player to me that's never had that ego. He's never said he's going to do this or he's going to do that. He's been putting thrust in front of the camera quite a lot. He was a kind of go-to guy for pressers and stuff. He's always been quietly efficient, even when he's spoken. I've not read his autobiography, but I might check it out now. But he's a player that I think has deserved everything that he's got because he's worked hard and he's been overlooked for being people's personal favourite. there's always been players that have been lauded a lot more for maybe contributing a lot less, but because they were a bit more flamboyant or a bit more, as Amy said, showboaty, call it what you like, but you can't underestimate James Forrest's contribution in the Celtic jersey. It's colossal. And any success he gets in future success, he's earned and he's deserved. And I'd love to see him make a fantastic impact in the second half of the season, because, again, you're now looking at a lot of options there, aren't you, in the forward areas?
Yeah, you are. Yeah.
Giakoumakis, as I said, the last one, with the real Giakoumakis stand up. Now you have to. He might be the one that comes on from the bench tonight, assuming that he's on the bench and he's fit. Because this guy's got a role to play. You can't not contribute. You have to contribute. So it's moving forward.
Absolutely. One point on Forrest at the age of 30, Tony, you do look at him and think, well, you could be looking at another 4 or 5 years of Jamesy Forrest playing for Celtic. He's not the type of player like one that I'm going to be speaking about in a wee second that hasn't looked after himself, and yet, even if you do look after yourself, there's nothing you can do about troublesome injuries at times. Talking about Kyogo, aggravated the injury against St Johnstone. We're going to miss him. We're going to miss him badly. But as some of the commenters are saying in here, we're bringing in a player who's got pace to burn. That much is clear. I've loved his input so far in the press conferences as well. He's very decisive in what he says. He's very clear in what he's going to say. He's here to win. He's here to beat Rangers. And I just think that, straight away, the last player that said something similar to that was Chris Sutton, and he did okay. He wanted to put Rangers back in their place, so that's fine. Maeda tonight, I'm looking forward to seeing him. I do think there's a chance Hatate will start, but it's not guaranteed. As you say, we've got other options in that area. But in terms of options up top, Maeda's going to start. One player who I hope's on the bench is Giakoumakis, one who won't be involved because he's had his contract torn up, is Lee Griffiths. There's been a lot written about and said on social media about Griffiths, and where does he go from here? You look at the landscape, Amy, of Scottish football at this level. Is he good enough to play at this level? Well, he's got the talent to play at this level. Is there a manager out there who's going to take a punt on him? Possibly in the Premiership, perhaps. Is Griffiths able to, in terms of financially, is he able to step down to the Championship? All of these things we'll need to take into account. Some people reckon he'll end up elsewhere, he'll move away from Scotland. I don't think he could possibly go to a level down in England. Where does his future lie, Amy? And, Tony's written about what could have been for Lee Griffiths. We all know what could have been for Lee Griffiths. It's not happened at Celtic. It was the right decision to tear up the contract. But where does he go from here?
I don't think he has a future in Scottish football, if I'm honest with you. Certainly not in either of the top 2 flights, and I don't think he'll dip down any lower. Because I think he'll himself think that he's better than that. And as you say, there's probably no denying that natural talent, that he probably is better than that. But no club, he's not, no disrespect at all, but if he can't do it at Dundee, and I'm not meaning more the level of Dundee, James McPake is one of his best friends. We're at Hibs together for a really long time, and that is really why the move to Dundee worked for all parties. Obviously, he'd been at Dundee earlier on in his career, but if anybody was really going to get a tune out of him, it was going to be McPake. McPake certainly thought that he'd be able to control him, be able to get him back to the fit, fire and Lee Griffiths that we all kind of, do know what he can do and how great that level can be. But he's not done it, and he's not going to do it for his friend, and I mean friend of 10, 15 years now, a really long time. Then it's not going to happen. Certainly not, like I say, at any of this level, at any club at this level. I think the best move for him would be going abroad, going somewhere else. But obviously, he has a young family. That's a tricky situation as it is. But I don't think that he has a career in Scottish football again. I don't think if he dipped down any further, as much as I'm saying, I don't think he personally would. I don't think that would be, probably responded to very well by fans of said certain clubs. Just with everything that comes with it, you don't want to, kind of have a guy like that at your club, I don't think. He splits opinion now. And I think it's a sad state of affairs because, we can all say it, naturally talented player, gifted player, goal-scoring player, but he's not done what a top professional should do. He should be ridiculous numbers, ridiculous stats, should have ridiculous amount of appearances for Scotland, the national team, goals for the national team. We shouldn't still be going back to these 2 free kicks against England, but that's where we're at, and obviously the penalty. But no, Celtic have finally now done the right thing and ripping up his contract. And I mean, nobody was kind of a bigger Lee Griffiths fan than me. Being from where I am as well, he grew up here, played. He's always kind of around here. This is local to him. Obviously, when he was at Hibs as well, always seen him around. So it is a sad state of affairs. But now is the time, and Celtic have finally done the right thing and ripping up his contract.
Yeah, I mean, you look at last season and the fact he scores, Tony, last December when we won the quadruple treble in the Scottish Cup. There was talk that he might have been in the Scotland squad. How bizarre is that now that we're talking about a guy without a club and possibly without a future in Scottish football? They were talking about him possibly being in the Scotland squad. And we're now in a situation, I think Amy's right. It looked as though it was a perfect fit for him up in Dundee. It's obviously not worked out. I don't think he'll drop down 2 divisions in Scotland, Tony. I don't know if there's a manager. There's certainly a manager who would be needing goals, but I don't know if he'll be able to get them out of Lee Griffiths. We talk about him in glowing terms sometimes about his goal-scoring prowess, but you need to go back to Ronnie Dyler's time at Celtic to see a season which he really has performed well enough for Celtic. And I know when he scored those 2 memorable goals for Scotland, it was during Brendan Rodgers' time. But it was during Brendan Rodgers' time that his career went off the rails.
I think off the park there's a lot that's very unsavoury about Lee Griffiths. Talking about recent actions. The not becoming of a Celtic player, actions not becoming of a Celtic player, which has led to his Celtic contract being torn up. But also, I'll cut him some slack in terms of there's mental health issues there, clearly. And I hope he gets the right help that he's needed to steer himself back on track. And I think the crying shame about Lee Griffiths is he is a wonderful goal scorer. And Alison McConnell made a fair point that he was a few goals short of being the first Celtic player to hit 100 league goals since Henrik Larsson, and the first Scottish player to hit 100 league goals since Kenny Dalglish did it in 76. So if you're asking Lee Griffiths regrets, he'll have a few, because he was given more chances to become that guy, to become that legendary figure.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the goals he scored for Celtic will go down in folklore and history and Scotland. But I think at some point Lee Griffiths had to help himself as well. And I don't think he did. Didn't set that high bar as an example of what you and I would deem a role model for a Celtic player. And I'm still allowing for the fact that there was mental health issues there. He needs help. The guy clearly needs help. And I think Celtic have got to the end of their tether with him. And I've said before, the club is moving in a different direction under Ange and didn't need that, didn't want that baggage. But I hope he does continue in his football journey. I don't know who will take a punt on him. But if you can get this guy's head focused and on the straight and narrow, he will score you goals, because there is nobody better. And if there's a more natural finisher in the country, then somebody needs to point them out to me. Because he was that good, could have been that good, and there'll be a lot of what ifs and maybes and buts and regrets with nobody more than Lee Griffiths himself for his conduct on and off the park. And that's basically all I can really say about Lee Griffiths.
Yep.
I think people are conflicted and their opinions are divided, but you remember he's a human being as well.
Absolutely. He's 31. He's at that stage of his career now where, maybe his best days are behind him. I think that's where this all points towards. Tonight, obviously we're all buzzing for the game, but let's not forget that young, brave Celtic warrior, Rory, And this is something that came to my attention because of yourself, Tony, because you were tweeting about it. You know, he's a wee brave warrior, isn't he? I mean, you read his story. Just tweet in at Rory Wish to Walk with the number 2 on Twitter, and you'll get the full story. You can actually donate to the cause as well. But what the family are looking for is for a loud and proud cheer in the 9th minute, a roar for Rory. That's the hashtag. We've been sharing it on the Twitter. We're going to mention it today. We're going to mention it tonight. And hopefully we do get a wee bit of momentum with that. Tony, I'm late to this. It was yourself that introduced me to it. But these are the things that social media can be used for positively.
You cannot watch that video of that wee guy walking and not be touched by that. And if you're part of the Celtic family, the wide Celtic family, you can't do anything other than offer some kind of help. And I put it out on Twitter, you know what, a good idea, a roar for Rory. It was just the first thing that came to my mind. And his mum told him, and he's really excited about that. And, you know, just watch the video, just it'll melt your heart. You know, the guy that sees dearest wish to walk, something we take for granted, and you see him with his wee trolley pushing it, and he's shouting about Celtic. He's even showing people how to roar. It's just brilliant. I mean, I would love it to happen for the wee guy, and just and there's a GoFundMe page, and they've raised a lot of money, and they've got a target in mind. And yeah, if you can donate, fine. But if you're going along tonight, yeah, give him a cheer, because the wee guy would love it. And he's you know, I'm aware there are a lot of people out there facing similar problems, but they don't always come into my feed. And it's just something that came into my feed, and I was quite touched by it, and I just thought it'd be nice to do something and help. And since I tweeted that roar for Rory, the amount of Celtic supporters that got in touch, it shows me that the club's a family. It really is.
Yeah.
And his mum even got in touch with me as well to say thanks, and he's excited. And you know, I think yeah, if you can help make his wish come true, then it'd be great.
Absolutely. And that is what social media should be used for, Amy Canavan.
Absolutely, it is. It's endearing, and everything that Tony said, retweeted it as well, just to get the message around, because it just makes your heart warm, and it makes you smile, and it is. They say social media can be whatever, but when stories like this, it makes it all worthwhile. Absolutely.
Yep, there we go. 9th minute. Give wee Rory a roar. It's been a quick one this morning. Amy, you're obviously going to get yourself ready. You're the driver. You're the designated driver tonight. I'll be back on this evening for the match day coverage, so please join me half an hour before kickoff, half-time and at full-time, as usual, on A Celtic State of Mind. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved in the comment section. It was a busy show. We're over 1,100, so thank you all for tuning in. And thank you once again to Tony Haggerty and Amy Canavan for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.